Okay.
Book 2, Chapter 6, or Chapter 40 of the big trilogy. So, chip off the old block. Before we start, let's set the intention. We really just want to come together and hold compassionate, loving space for each other, and really just seek to understand one another, to really listen from the heart. And there's no criticism or judgment. There's just acceptance and patience and love. So as we go around and do a check-in, let's focus on the best in everybody here. Suzanne, do you want to do a check-in? See, what did you think of Chapter 6?
I think I read Chapter 6 last week because we were going to go over it last week, and we didn't. And so now I'm like, well, maybe I should have reread it. But I have read it, and I'm just waiting to get, our discussion, and then I can understand it better. Because I'm
in the same boat as you, Suzanne.
You know what? I'm exactly in the same boat as you too.
1 week makes a difference. Like, I read that a week ago.
But can we remember it?
I'm sure once we get into it and get going.
Yeah.
I did go through and I sort of highlighted. I mean, I read the highlight parts I've highlighted, and so. But as usual, I really find this book club very helpful. And first of all, it just sort of keeps you on it. So it's easy to set aside. And so, anyway.
Right.
Cool.
I have nothing profound.
And Daniel, you said you're in the same boat?
Same boat.
Yeah. And Bojana, you too, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I love what he's writing, because when I'm reading it and I'm really focusing, I think I'm understanding it. But if I were to repeat it, not even a week later, but just like 15 minutes later, I cannot repeat his wonderful structure of sentences and vocabulary that he's using. He's just amazing with his language, I mean, in everything. But for me, it's just, I cannot possibly repeat what he says in my own words even. It's hard, not to mention in his wonderful vocabulary. That's why I appreciate it. I can get together with you and we can get over it. Like Sylvia, I have some stuff highlighted, but I don't even know what. So I'm hoping that you guys will refresh my memory. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And then I guess, Dean, did you get a chance to read it?
No, I'm in the same boat with you guys. I have read it, but it's been 6 months, 8 months, something like that. And then I got confused this morning on where I was supposed to be, so I browsed through the highlighted sections.
Okay.
So.
Cool. And Sylvia, it must be fresh for you.
I just finished reading it 10 minutes ago.
Yay!
Yay!
Oh, Sylvia's fresh.
So it's fresh in your mind.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, you can lead the way then.
I don't know about that, but I guess my overall impression is he starts off saying he's trying to answer questions, and it feels like he's trying to consolidate it a little bit around themes, which is great. But then each time he goes through it, I feel like there's either new information or information I didn't grasp from earlier. So it just feels like it felt really good, like, wow, this is great. It's clustered around a few ideas, but then there's this other part that is wow, even when we talk about ideas that I thought we so fully explored in every single nuance, there's more layers and more nuance. So I guess that's the challenge, I think, for me, of his work in general, is you kind of want to boil it down so that you can make it actionable, and yet when you explore it, there's so many layers. And so for me, that's kind of more what it brought up, was wow, there's this tension between making it digestible and actionable for myself versus understanding. And those two kind of sometimes feel a little bit at odds. Do you know what I mean? Because there's just so much there that it can get overwhelming. So that's what this chapter brought up for me.
Yeah, I totally see that. I can hear
Sylvia's.
Oh, yeah. Because we can hear you, but you're not that loud.
Yeah.
Does anybody know how one does this?
You might just have to speak closer to the mic.
Okay.
Sometimes there's a little volume button on your mic itself. Otherwise, Windows system,
Okay, wait. I have a question. Where's my mic?
I know.
I just magically
Hop
dropped.
on.
Sometimes you can see a little hole in your computer or laptop, and that's where the mic is.
Oh, there. Oh, say something?
Anything happen? I've nothing. I see nothing. I see the little light at the top, which is the camera, but
That sounds better though. It does. You do sound.
I just moved it a little closer. All right, so I'll just sit closer and talk louder.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Baby, what'd you think?
I like the what is it called here? The volcanic model of mental awareness. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a weatherman, believe it or not. At talent shows, I'd be like always doing the weather for talent shows and family talent shows. So I really enjoyed that element of chapter 6, and I'm glad no one else read chapter 7.
No, Bojana read.
Really? Bojana? Harsh Keener.
Stayed up until 12:30 yesterday to finish.
Well, you're prepared for next week.
Which she won't remember because it'll be a week from now.
That's right.
Okay. Dean, did you want to?
Sylvia, if you go to the far, if you're working on a Windows system, on the far left at the bottom is your Windows button. Just click that, and then a couple icons up as settings, and then click the first one, which is some other stuff. And you should be able to adjust it there.
Button what?
Maybe we can reach out to me offline.
Okay. Maybe afterwards, if you have time for a couple seconds, then
Sure, you got it.
I don't have a Windows button.
Okay. Actually, in the Zoom box, there's a settings. Not in the actual window where you see our faces, but there's another window prior to opening up the Zoom.
I'll try and sort it out for next time.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So on the first page, did anybody have anything that stood out for you on the first page there?
First page.
He repeats the same stuff over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we cannot write it.
I like the line that says the puppets are of the sheet. The sheet is not of the puppets. It's at the bottom of the page.
Right. Yeah.
Good thing to just remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that.
I thought it was interesting. He said that even minerals have some seminal awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But what does that mean?
That I think they have very, very dim awareness, but for me, it just means that more things are aware and connected than we tend to realize. We think of just humans or maybe some animals as well, but I think it's more far-reaching than that.
Right. Consciousness is fundamental, and everything springs from that ground, even minerals, which their awareness is, like Susan's saying, very dim. But there is some kind of an impression, memory. They hold a energy signature from millennia.
So their ability to lower their entropy isn't remotely close to our ability as what we are as consciousness. Is that correct?
Correct.
But I don't think minerals are even conscious, though. They're just this dim awareness, right?
Yeah.
Because conscious, you need the ability to make choices. So you have to have free will to be conscious.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
Vision space. Consciousness is a whole different.
But Dean, I like what you said. That term imprint really gives me a good visual in terms of understanding that there is an element of some type of consciousness, but they're not evolved as we are as conscious beings.
Yeah. Just Yeah, real basic stuff, building blocks, but still part of the total awareness of.
I wonder if how that relates to, you know, a lot of people believe that crystals have, you know, powers to create certain vibrations or healing or whatever.
Well, I think everything has energy. It's that energy that allows it to help us create breakthroughs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and crystals. There's a nice piece. Are all the way they're formed is their structure all runs in the same direction. So, like, a piece of granite is just all cattywampus, kind of random how it's put together. And crystals are all, just run in the same direction. And that's how they grow, is they all kind of line up and point at the same thing and just stack upon. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, Tom collects crystals. That's his thing. So if you ever want to get Tom something, get him a crystal.
Oh, really?
He's got a case where he collects them. And then I asked him, I'm like, oh, do you collect them because of the energy that they have? And he's like, no, I just like the way they look.
That's good to.
Yeah. So moving on to the next page then. Anything on that page?
So can you guys explain to me once again why he takes these excerpts and changes the writing, basically lowers the font? Is this his way of? I don't. Someone explained it to me in the previous sessions that we had, but is he really kind of just? What's he trying to do here with these types of excerpts?
It's just an aside, and he's trying to provide some more clarity around a particular topic.
Or humor.
Or humor. And sometimes it's a, hey, don't take this stuff too seriously, and he'll sort of poke fun at things. But it's just a way to maybe step aside for a moment and provide extra explanation or sort of some content.
Yeah, kind of like when we had textbooks in the old days, and you'd read the textbook, and then there'd be like a bit that was in a box that was kind of separate that would try and illuminate or give an example or something. So he's trying to give you, like, although I find that, I mean, that's what he's trying to do. I find that sometimes it feels like it's more than a text box, but that's what he says he's trying to do. He's just trying to highlight to you, like, okay, this is the main thing. Now I'm going off on a tangent. I just want you to know that this is a little bit of a tangent, so that when you come back to the regular writing, you know that you've gone off on a tangent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think for the second page where he talks about spiritual growth provides for more brightness, capability, effective organization, and more energy to do work. In other words, more personal power. Like a summary for me of the chapter. You know, as you grow, this is what comes from that. Oh, it's a kitty.
Hey,
That's decorated right there.
The other thing I was kind of wondering is, you know, Tom often, it seems to me, as he explains things, he'll change his vocabulary to give you more and more understanding. So now all of a sudden bodies are sensor platforms and souls are FWAUs. Like, so that's another thing I feel like, whoa, he's taken up the vocabulary again, another notch. And
because they were ready to move up.
Yeah, I guess so. But so he had that coming off from the other page. The first word is MPMR. PMR, our sensor platforms, our bodies, and FWAOs, our souls, are all constructs of evolved digital awareness that we call consciousness. So he's just, again, trying to get us closer and closer to that notion of this is all a digital construct, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and our sensor platforms, our bodies, are the sensory apparatus that picks up the information, and then we interpret it from there. We interpret that information based on what this body picks up. And that's why all bodies are different, right? Some bodies have different constraints on them. Some people might have something, chemical imbalance in their brain. You know, some people have diseases that then can place more constructs on their sensory apparatus, and therefore they interpret this reality different. That's why we all interpret the same kind of information differently, because our constraints are different.
Right.
That's why I like the analogy, you know, of the bacteria to the body being the universe, and how different universes may be different too.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the next, well, it's a paragraph at the top where he talks about how our intent, our focused mental energy, specifically directs and orders a portion of that same consciousness, just as Om's intent does, except that ours is typically dim, unfocused, and of low power. So that motivates me to really place effort towards focusing my intent, because that's something that I can control, is how focus my intent. And that's something that I really want to be able to control, is my focus and intent, because that's how I drive my reality. That's how I create my reality. The ability to focus that intent,
right? Or if you don't focus your intent, you just kind of drift around, right? Just kind of along and not really progress in any particular direction.
I've had a really hard time with this, with the focus of intent, ever since I had my illness, because I feel super like unfocused and kind of like I'm in a reorganization, and I keep trying to figure out at what level should I be focusing my intent. And since I'm confused, like right now I'm just saying my intent is to become love, like, you know, at a top level. But of course, it's great when you can have more specific intents that are below that. But because I feel so spiritually like I was thrown up in a bunch of pieces and it hasn't reorganized again, that's kind of where I'm going. Because I can't get more focused. So I'm just curious how people figure out like how to figure out, because the intent could be I want a new car, and then you're like, oh, am I doing that because of love, or am I doing that because of ego? Or, do you know what I mean? Like, it's really hard to figure out the level. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I do.
Oh, yay.
In the what Tom Campbell was talking about, the three paths.
Yes.
One of the things that really resonated with me was the whole objective of what he's talking about in those three paths are to move through your love space into your intellect. It's not for us to fear the intellect, but to move through the intellect through our love. And the intellect is a necessary component in this world for us to move through it logically, but we need to come from our heart space. And that's what really resonated with those three paths, apart from obviously the three paths. So I hope that adds some value.
Yeah, and I think you got it, Sylvia. Like that's what he always says, is have that intent to grow up, to become love. And as long as that is your core intent, then it will happen. That's all you need, is that strong desire from the being level. Right. And then everything else is just details. You know, one of my favorite quotes of his is, you can manipulate things in this physical matter reality. That's all well and good. But understanding the big picture is vastly more significant. So like you said, yeah, sure, you can focus your intent on getting a car or on healing somebody or on getting the promotion. But really, none of that
ego-based though, right?
Yeah. That's just rearranging the pieces on the Titanic, like he always says. Like, what's fundamental is the quality of your consciousness, your spiritual growth. And that's where your intent is, to grow the quality of your consciousness. So
but those things are important. I mean, you still have to live. You still have to eat. You still don't have to have a house to live in, but it might make some things easier and a car to drive. So it's not necessarily that those don't have to be from ego. They could just be part of, hey, you still have this physical existence that has to play out while you're trying to grow up.
Yeah, you got to honor yourself and your needs and your survival.
Yeah, if you've got kids, you got to take care of them. And so having a car, getting a car is not necessarily of an ego-based thing. It might be if it's like, oh, I got to buy this really great expensive car in order to impress the neighbors, versus I need some reliable transportation so I can still do my daily activity.
And a good way, and a good way to measure that is, and I think I got this from Tom somewhere. To measure an intent, you can look at the complete effect of the value it provides for how many people or the whole. It affects and helps 20 people. It affects and helps just you. Maybe if it's just you and it's a Maserati that's fast, it's more of an ego-based thing. Whereas if it's an SUV that gets the groceries and gets the kids to school, so that's another war. Is just how many what effect is it covering? What's the footprint of the finished intent?
Yeah, I saw this really cool quote. Actually, it was from that post that I made about Bobby, and one of my friends commented on it.
What post?
On Facebook. He's not on Facebook.
You look really good in the post, Bobby.
Thanks. Sis. She photoshopped it.
No, I put a picture on it.
Gotta throw some ego dust on a little.
Yeah. But the quote was from Tom Campbell, and it said, "Your life." What is it? Your life is designed for your growth, not your pleasure. But when you make the right choices, you get both.
Woohoo.
Nice.
I really like that.
Beautiful.
I also read somewhere that, I'm not sure it was from Tom or from some other person I was following, but to create an intent, you have to use your five senses. It creates a more powerful intent. Like, what does it look like? What does it feel like? And what does it taste like? That kind of stuff. Because that gets you down. That gets you heart centered, I think.
That's visualization.
Yeah.
Helps you to focus on it too.
Yeah.
So I have a question.
Tangible, more real, clarity.
Yeah, for sure.
How does when we go back to the sheet analogy of us being puppets and then the rubber bands being constraints, how does intention play a role in that particular
analogy?
Yeah.
Well, maybe the positive. Let's say it's a positive intent with positive vibrations, or negative intent with negative vibrations. Just remember that the rubber band isn't cutting off everything. So, like, my positive intent or negative intent is flowing to the rest of the sheet, even if I'm, loosely held by this rubber band, but it still is flowing out to everything. So whatever I do that impacts any other bump on the sheet impacts the entire sheet.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. Thanks.
Going back to focusing your intent in the physical matter reality to create your destiny or to create your life experience. And kind of thinking about the three paths, it feels like when you don't focus your intent, or when you don't control or try to make things happen the way that you want them to happen, and you just kind of surrender to life unfolding before you, things seem to happen better than I could have ever imagined for myself anyway. So that whole focusing my intent here, I'm doing less and less, and really just having that firm being level intent of I just want to grow, put whatever I need to do in my past so that it can help me to grow in the most enjoyable way. I don't need any hard life. So.
And so that's what it means to lower our entropy, correct?
Get rid of lower entropy, getting rid of fear, getting rid of insecurity. Then the result of a low entropy state is love. So when you get rid of your fear, what you're left with is love.
Unconditional love.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's the only kind there is, yeah.
Yeah, and lowering entropy it's not really part of the same thing. It's kind of a different subject. But,
Yeah, I remember when Tom was here, and I was really excited after the Vancouver talk and everything, and I'm like, okay, what should we do next? I'm like, we need to get you on stage with Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza and Rupert. We got to bring you guys all together. And then he was like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, that's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to make that happen. And then he just paused, and then he looked at me, and he's like, you don't have to focus on it. it'll just happen if it's meant to happen. Like, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess so. Life is so much easier that way when you just like let things happen, right?
Mm.
You don't feel as stressed,
Yeah.
overwhelmed, right?
Right. Yeah.
Be a co-producer with Om, right?
Exactly.
Part of the team.
What my friend Ellen used to say was that, it's this weird balance between like a focused intent and a total acceptance with whatever happens. So it's like not focusing on the outcome. You can have the intent without like focusing on the outcome. Like you can be like, oh, I really want a job that helps people in education. You can have this intent. And then some other cool job opens up that is totally what you should be doing. And then you're like, oh, like in the fact that you held this intention that it was going to be in education, but it ended up being journalism or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's that openness when you get super attached to the outcome. Like, oh, to be Bruce Lipton that's standing on the stage, and if not, I'm a failure. Like that's when the intent becomes icky. But if you have this generalized intent of we all want all these people to be together, then it doesn't. The specifics of how it comes about are less important.
Right. Don't be so rigid. Don't squeeze quite so tight. Stay open. Hang loose.
Yeah.
If it's too hard, this is not the way.
Yeah. If the door doesn't open, it's not your door.
Don't force it open.
You got it. Break it. Yeah.
Sounds easy.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the book. Anything on the third page?
Say one other thing.
Oh, yeah.
The only other thing on this page that I just thought was like important again, and maybe like he said it before, but that thoughts are objects. Like that was another big point of the page where he just said thoughts are objects.
Okay.
Thoughts are
Really
objects.
hard to hear you, Sylvia.
It is? I'm really
There you go. That's better. Yeah, just couldn't quite catch some of what you're saying. I heard thoughts are objects.
Yeah, that's it.
That's all you had to hear.
Yeah.
Thoughts are objects. That's, really key piece. Thoughts are objects.
Yeah, that's a trip. I've been learning some really interesting stuff about thoughts and how they can have a life of their own, perhaps. Yeah.
On the third page, I highlighted the bottom paragraph and then obviously moved into the last two paragraphs on the following page. That really helped me understand kind of where I'm at right now, and yeah, I really enjoyed this sentence. He goes, the digital potential energy plus synergy of conscious digital system of fixed capacity remains constant. Here, synergy is inverse related to entropy. Synergy equals constant or entropy. So I'm still wrapping my head around lowering entropy, higher entropy. And so that allowed me to kind of a little bit more insight into what's going on. And then as he continues on, he talks about AUO and how energy is an individuated conscious entity. So yeah, that's what resonated with me.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, what's your understanding of it?
The higher the entropy, the more frantic and out of balance. The lower the entropy, the more in a kind of a calm state where it's not as frantic. The way that I can relate to it is oftentimes in my active income, I'm wearing multifaceted hats as a director, and payroll, AP, AR, disputes, scheduling, marketing, everything. So I recognize that during the day, my entropy is very high at times because I feel frantic, and you get this little feeling inside where you're like, your heart's palpitating, where I then try to control stillness and kind of take some deep breaths where I'm trying to physically kind of lower myself in my energy state, where I can come from a more calm place and make better decisions effectively. And so that's kind of how I'm relating to this notion of entropy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Nice.
Yes.
And what do you do, Bobby?
I'm a director of a college.
Yeah, that sounds like it's got a lot of potential for high entropy.
Monday, guys. I walk in on Monday at 100+ emails. And I'm like, how do you people derail from a Saturday, Sunday? I just don't understand what's going on. Like, I don't get to my emails. I don't get to work, actual work until about noon after answering these type of emails, right? So I'm just,
And so for this MBT volunteer project I told you about, I'm like, babe, I got like 100 emails. I don't know how to organize them. Daniel, I'm like, I can't find that email. Do you have it?
I have this skill called typing. I can type over 100 words a minute.
Yeah,
So.
but I type too. I just I lose them in the mix.
The way I look at things, because I'm so inundated with emails, is that if it's really important, they'll find a way to get a hold of you.
Right, Daniel?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Daniel. That's my motto too.
Oh, I deleted it by accident.
Yeah.
Meant to happen, no accidents.
Yeah, sometimes that stuff just gets buried when you're under heavy fire like that.
Hi, guys. I have a question on the next page, and maybe you guys can add some insight. And it says, AUO began as a digital potential energy and evolved into an AUM by lowering its entropy, which is increasing its energy, as a fundamental process optimized its relationship with its environment.
Mm-hmm.
I need a little help in terms of what this is kind of meaning. I think, Dean, you touched on it a little bit in terms of how AUO. Yeah, I just need some help, guys. I think, Dean, that's kind of what was coming up for me when you were mentioning some things, and I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense. I want to ask that question when I get to that. So, what are you guys' thoughts? Any insights?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Well, what is your take on this AUO began as a digital potential energy and then evolved into this absolute unbounded manifold by lowering its entropy as the fundamental process optimized its relationship with its environments?
I think what it's saying is AUO began as, much like us, a very dim awareness, and its environment, and through the fundamental process, it lowered its entropy, and so it sort of grew up. It grew up from AUO into AUM, and that's where, this chapter talks about a chip off the old block. That's what we're doing. We start from a place, and through our environment and the fundamental process, we're supposed to be growing up in order to lower our entropy.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what I take from that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the fundamental process is just evolution, so trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
So it started off with this dim ability, and then just through trial and error of seeing what worked, it eventually became more sophisticated. And then it was sophisticated enough that Tom wanted to call it, give it a
AUM.
Than AUO. So
absolute unbounded manifold.
Yeah.
So what's coming up for me right away is the theory of the Big Bang, where science has indicated that we obviously started from one point. You can take measurements in the universe that we're still expanding, but we're increasing at a diminishing rate, which means eventually we're actually going to revert back to this point of this Big Bang. So what's coming up with me when you guys start to explain this is that all of a sudden, through that, the fundamental atoms and different types of elements, that they've evolved and into these set planets, solar systems, and all these other things, and then eventually our consciousness continued to evolve. So that fundamental process is continually evolving. Is that, like, that's what's coming up for me? I could be completely off base, guys, but I'm just trying to tie these types of concepts into other disciplines that I have learned and understood, which allows me to kind of fill in the gaps of my understanding, and that's why this is really piquing my interest. So, what are you guys' thoughts on that? Is that something that relates? Is it, I got to go drink some coffee, pick up, or what's going on here?
Part of it that's hard to remember sometimes is it's really a digital Big Bang, and it's not a physical thing that's happening, although that's how we tend to believe it, or it resonates with us because we feel like everything's physical, and it's just the, I'm not sure how to say this, it's just the constraints of our particular environment. But
it's an experiment. It's a physical experiment. So AUO and AUM is kind of like non-physical. So that's like the big consciousness or God or spirit or whatever anybody might relate to it. So it's this non-physical digital energy that started off kind of unsophisticated and through its own evolution became sophisticated. So we're now calling it AUM. And then all the stuff that happens in our physical reality is an experiment, and the result of the experiment is going to be, are we profitable to the evolution of AUM? Like, is how we're evolving profitable? If we all go and we lower our entropy, then that's profitable to AUM. If not, AUM could theoretically just, wipe the slate clean and start a new experiment. I think.
And hit the reset button.
Hit the reset button. But yeah, so the Big Bang and all that would have been a physical designed kind of experiment that uses evolution, everything else, all the science we understand. Those are the rules of the digital experiment that we're in. I don't know. Is that how other people see it? That's what I thought he was saying.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And the way I see it is that way. And this particular thing, Bobby, AUO and AUM is just kind of he's sort of fleshing it out, giving you information, a little history of how it began and what it evolved to, from just a oneness, consistent throughout one being, to unbounded manifold, one into many specifically, where Alm is playing with different states, on, off, stress, no stress, push, pull, in whatever fashion this big absolute unbounded oneness can use, like a sine wave, and just trying with its being to have a difference, push, pull, hot, cold.
This, that, yeah.
Yeah, this and that. And then through millennia or whatever, from one into many, AUO into AUM, many being, starting to play with time, perhaps, matter, and then through that, the unbounded manifold, one into many, starts to create our reality, physical space, and maybe other dimensions, countless other dimensions. But it's just kind of a history of how it's changing its form and going into that.
But they're metaphors, and so we have to remember to not get too caught up in the details. They're just metaphors trying to explain something in terms that we can understand. It may not really be that way. That's just the metaphor being used to help us understand it.
So, if I may continue, from this AUM, which is this manifolds from one to many, it says a self-modifiable system, which is our reality, must perform work to decrease its average entropy, which means on aggregate for us, or increase its average entropy. More precisely, and here's the key word, is profitable work done by the system, which is us in the manifold, is proportional to the increase in its energy, or equivalently is inversely proportional to its change in its entropy. And therefore, spiritual growth is the natural work of this consciousness system. So, thank you. It's starting to become a little bit more clear.
And also, the only thing I would add to that, I agree. I think that was actually beautifully said, and that actually helped me to have you crystallize it like that. But I think the other thing is that Om is also going through that same system of profitable growth for it. Like, it's not just us, it's
so that's what it means in terms of the VMPR subscript N plus 1, VMPR subscript N plus 2. Okay.
There's other realities within the larger consciousness system.
And so when we go back to the previous session when we talked about the bed sheets, in terms of the bed sheet being like bed sheets on top of bed sheets, or Daniel, how did you explain that again? Remember?
I said that each end coming out is a different either physical matter reality or non-physical matter reality, but in overall it encompasses the larger consciousness system. It's part of the larger consciousness system. And because with the elastic band, we're bounded within this reality, and other realities are bounded by its own reality. but
Sure.
theoretically we can communicate to other realities.
Because we're still
We're not
all
physically
part of the same
constrained
bed
to it.
sheet. Yeah, we're still all part of the same bed sheet, so we can still connect to other parts of the bed sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's bring it back to the book. Looks like we're on page 85. So why can't we get our story straight? I don't know what page that is for you, Bojan.
335 in the big book.
Okay. Did anything stand out for you guys there?
Apparently not.
Okay, so
Yeah. So, well, for me, I love this because this is an explanation. You know, this is sort of the thing where people are always like, well, if they're psychic, why did they get it wrong? You know, and this is him explaining why. You know, it's that the reason that if 3 or 4 people have perfect, you know, communication from, or perfect downloads for them, they're what they're going to take away from the download, their experience base, their vocabulary, their thought process are each different, so they'll communicate it differently.
Mhm.
Or some might have clearer lines in than others, or some people might misinterpret. And so he's just going on about why, you know, in psi phenomena, sometimes it seems like there's a disconnect, but in fact that's just, you know, basically human error rather than necessarily that they're not connected.
yeah, exactly. And over on the next page, kind of elaborates on that. The second paragraph, he says, "This is a personal evolutionary journey, and a group effort cannot replace your individual effort. Your experience is a combination of what you perceive through your limited senses and how you interpret those perceptions. Interpretation is based on your previous experiences and the quality of your consciousness, as well as your understanding of little truths and big truths."
Right.
That's why we all see it differently. We see things differently.
Super cool.
What page was that on, Vanessa?
Page 86, the second paragraph.
Okay.
336 in the big book.
Yeah, and I mean, there's nothing we can really do about our previous experiences and quality of our consciousness. Well, yeah, we can improve that. That takes time. Evolution takes time. And then he says, you know, it's also the understanding of the little truth and big truth. So our understanding of big truth, that's kind of what we're doing right now, is we're, you know, improving our understanding of big truth. By doing so, we're able to interpret information that comes to us in much more, with much more clarity and accuracy, because we're not viewing it through our own limited lens. Sorry, Suzanne, you're going to say something?
It's like trying to define the color red. How do we know that anybody else sees what I call red in the same way? And when you go to describe it, it's you're using these limited words and trying to convey this meaning to other people, but everybody, as far as we know, could be seeing that color in a completely different way. And we have no way to know that, like, the way I see the red is the same way that you do, because it's my perception versus your perception.
Exactly.
Can I add something on page 85? It says, and guys, I come from a strong secular background, so this really resonated with me. It goes right at the bottom. The reporters do not know each other and will divulge nothing about themselves. So he goes through this, you know, explaining something from 3 reporters, and then goes, notice that your own education and knowledge of the subject is one of the most critical variables. Do you see the problem that exists in reconstructing information that has been inadvertently and unavoidably filtered by individual memory, capability, and understanding? I think that resonates with what Vanessa was saying in terms of, and then it goes on to the next page and he says, in the second paragraph, if your perception or interpretation is noisy, wrong, or significantly incomplete, your conclusions will be inaccurate.
Right.
Thanks, Dave.
One thing I do with my clients is that I you know that exercise where that picture where you it has like find 12 faces within this picture.
Yeah.
And some people find 4, and some people find 7 and 8, whatever. Right? But I said, if you do it as a group, you'll find all 12. It's how we see things within this picture. And when they see that perspective, and when they share it with other people within the group, and when they find all 12, it's like, oh, okay, I couldn't see that, but you could.
Yeah, I like that.
Reminds me of when we were at the retreat in Tennessee, and I had that one session where I totally got the download on when we were trying to do what's it called, remote. The point where I was so freaked out is it was the same thing. Like if there was a picture, I would see like dark in this corner and light in this corner, and I would see jagged edges, and I would see something round. And my mind would try and fill it in, and I'd be like, oh, it's a landscape. That round thing in the top right corner near the light is a sun or a moon, and this is land, and these spikes and mountains. But I filled in all the edges. But if I sort of went back and went, hey, no, I'm not going to fill in the edges. I'm just going to say there was a round object, there was a dark thing, there were jagged edges. And then the picture would come up, and it would be a steamboat with towers, and it would be, a cloud or a water tower that was round in the upper right-hand corner. So if I spoke and said the way my mind had filled in the edges, I would have said it's a landscape with a sun in the top right corner, which would have been absolutely wrong. But by resisting that and saying, oh, there's something round in the top corner, it's dark in the bottom half, and there's jagged edges, then the picture would come up, and it would be totally accurate. So that's a real, concrete visual. I'm sure these things get so esoteric in these interpretations, but that was kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And it only happened once, but it was amazing.
And it happens in our everyday lives, too, with people, right? We get a little information, and then we assume we know everything that they're talking about. Or we get a little bit of information about a person, and then we assume we know who that person is, even though we haven't the slightest idea where they come from.
And our perceptions or experience helps create that image of who we think that is.
Yeah.
Tendency to want to project our own experiences or guesses or whatever it is on something else or someone else.
And that's why they have that saying that your perception of me is a reflection of you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Hard to really know a person if we're constantly projecting those stuff.
Or like Tom says, you cannot have an objective opinion. It can be only subjective.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, totally.
That's racism. That's why we have racism.
Yeah.
I work a lot in.
I'm right, you're wrong.
I know. I work a lot in mostly Black communities, and I'm just completely floored by the miscues that everybody.
Watch that movie, Green Book.
Green Book.
Green Book was that we thought.
Oh, that was good, huh?
It was really good, yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so page 87.
Oh, I have a question on this page. At the very bottom, he talks about meditation enables you to enlarge the cracks systematically, eventually lead to the development of broad and reliable avenues for intuitive expression. Do you think listening to the binaural beats can be a replacement for meditation? Like, can you get to the same place using, the binaural beats?
I think binaural beats helps you get to that specific state as well as meditation. Yes. I think the results are the same.
Yeah, the beats help you to meditate.
Yeah, what they do is they put your two hemispheres of your brain in synchronization is the idea, because you've got one frequency over here, say 5,500 hertz, and then on the other side it's 5,300 hertz. There's a slight difference, and your brain takes those frequencies and by communicating between the two halves comes up with a solution or a perception of, say, 5,400 hertz, which puts your hemispheres in sync.
Right. I mean, I understand that. I have a hard time with the meditation, but you put on the binaural beats and listen to that, and I'm just wondering, am I supposed to be doing both, or does it matter?
At the retreat, I was using the Muse headset, which is a biofeedback system, and it works with your phone, so it will tell you if you're at a deep level of meditation. And I used it in conjunction with the binaural beats. And by using the binaural beats, I was able to get to a very, very low meditative state. So using it together creates a more effective result.
Yeah, and the idea is just to clear your mind of thoughts. Just take this and breathe. Just let the thoughts go. The idea is to have a clear mind. So if the binaural beats help your mind to settle down, you find, then it's just a tool and it assists you to getting to that place, which is calm, like Daniel's saying, a lower meditative state, slower pulse, slower breathing rate, not random thoughts. What's the bill? Bills, food, survival.
The goal is to think of nothing, but it's hard for our mind not to think of nothing.
But also have a positive intent. That's like
Correct.
That's the bit. I'm like, am I thinking now, or am I having positive intent?
Yeah. Well, Tom would always say that before you meditate or do the binaural beats, create a positive intent.
Yeah.
Visualize success, maybe something like that.
Hey, is my microphone better? I did something that. Oh.
Much better.
Much better.
Yep.
It stopped completely.
We've lost her.
Don't touch it, you'll break it.
She's frozen.
We'll just visualize you with the positive intent.
So Daniel, you thought the Muse is worth the money that it costs to? I mean, it's.
I truly believe it, and that's what I use to help with. I use the Muse with some of my clients. I suggest them buying the Muse to help them become more relaxed. And the ones who actually have taken my offer and using it, they've seen a huge improvement in themselves. I can send you a link where you can save like 15 or 20%.
Oh yeah, because it's about $200.
Yeah,
So.
I think so. I'll send you a link.
Yeah, I might look into that.
Okay. Oh, she's gone.
She'll come back.
Maybe she has to do a restart.
Yeah.
Reboot.
Shut it down.
Mm-hmm. What is your favorite part? The volcano.
Like you can see my line where I just kept going, and I think it just really helped me understand that we have this deeper consciousness, and that the fissures or cracks through our meditation allows us to open these fissures, which allows the deeper consciousness through to our psyche to allow us to understand. And I'm kind of playing around with it. I've read it 3 or 4 times, and each time I read it, I'm like, oh, I didn't catch that. And then I read it again, I'm like, oh, I didn't catch that. And I'm like, so yeah, I like the bottom paragraph on page 87. It just says meditation enables you to enlarge the cracks systematically.
Mm-hmm.
And this leads to your development and reliable avenues for which intuitive expression is used. And then going back to coming from the heart space through to the intellect, that's what this analogy allowed me to understand. This, it's pretty deep stuff that he's getting through, and the more you can relate to something that I understand, the better I'm able to kind of implement it in my reality.
Yeah, and I like what he talks about on the next page where he says the real significance of a psi experience is the benefit it offers to the person who experiences it. Because on those occasions where it felt like I had one, some sort of insight or intuition or an experience, it really helped remind me that there's more to this than what maybe I can see and hear or feel with my physical senses. There's that connection, and that is just so much bigger.
Yeah, for sure.
So what I liked on page 88, and when I was a kid, we used to go up to this lake called Lillooet Lake, and Lillooet Lake came from volcanic rock. And my sister and I used to collect pumice stone. And if pumice stone gets wet, it actually becomes softer, although it's very hard. And the sentence says, a low quality of consciousness is thick, dense, and non-porous. It rarely permits meaningful leaks of intuition. I can tell you right now, my pumice stone is starting to get soaked and soaked every single day. The intuition is starting to leak through.
Nice.
Yeah, intuition, and also that that emotional state, right? Be in tune with your emotions and your feelings, because we're raised in a society where we're taught to really close off, to shut down our feelings, our emotions, and don't show your emotions. Like that's a sign of weakness if you show your emotions. So for me, intuition is getting in touch with the way that I feel, because as Tom often talks about, is your feelings, your emotions. That's who you really are at the deep level. Is that emotive state? You're back, Sylvia.
Yay! Now, can you hear me better? I tried to also fix the audio.
Yeah,
That's better.
Much better.
got a message. So we're on page 88.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had in the third paragraph, it says, for now, you may consider through packets as discrete energetic patterns of content propagate. What is that word?
Propagated.
Through and by reality cells from one individuated consciousness to another. It just kind of helped me bring back to the kind of the bed sheet and the puppets, and how we're downloading all these individual packets of energetic patterns, and then we're creating our constraints within it. And that's kind of how I interpret it. I'm open to saying, you're completely off base. This is deep stuff, guys, especially at like 11 o'clock at night.
Oh, man, it's hard. Seriously. Totally.
And it says, if that seems confusing, think about how information is passed around inside a complex computer simulation. And I do have a strong background in IT as well, so I understand how information is sent through fiber optic cables, where an email gets split up into 10,000 things, and then it eventually converges to where it's supposed to be arriving. And it's starting to help me understand just through these analogies. This guy's a super, super smart guy. I can't believe he can even articulate this in words.
For sure.
So.
I'm glad you said that, though, because that line, if it seems confusing, think about how information is passed around inside a complex computer simulation. I was like, oh, yeah, that's supposed to help me.
Nobody can't find her mic. I only think that's funny because I wouldn't be able to find my. I don't know what button do I push.
Oh, I am feeling really good about myself right now. No, I mean, I agree. I was confused by that, Bobby. Honestly, I'd love to hear people's thoughts. I think one of the things I was wondering is, I thought what he was trying to say, but I didn't know if I was right, was that there are these thoughts, and sometimes they have all sorts of layers to them and things that almost happen on their own that we're not aware of. Like that a thought can have a ton of different layers to it, and that's why it can have such power. But I wasn't totally sure, because every time I tried to read his language, I was like, is that what he's saying? What did everybody else think?
To me, I sort of liken it to like having a dream. A dream is like this experience that you get, and it can have so many different layers to it, and some of it is personal to you as the experiencer. Somebody else having that same particular dream wouldn't necessarily perceive it in the same way. And there's just these different layers to it, which can be with thought packets as well. I mean, it's just a different form of a thought packet, I think. It's just this different layer of, or this way to get information. I mean, that's how it feels to me.
Yeah. I think thoughts create thoughts. I think thoughts generate ideas in terms of, if this if this happens, if I create a thought, what are the possible realities of it? What are the possible results of it? And we'll have multiple results. I think over time we will pick one of the options and try it out. If it works, great. If not, back to the drawing board and take the next option until we figure out what's best for us. Profitability, as he calls it.
Right.
And it's sort of overlaid with whatever our belief systems are and our cultural experiences and our own personal experiences, and all of that stuff helps to change how you particularly perceive it.
Mm-hmm.
So could it be, without getting too political, and thankfully there's not a lot of Americans on here, but like if a bunch of people are sitting around thinking Donald Trump is crazy and evil and he's going to harm us, and there's a ton of people thinking that, like, that makes him be crazy and evil and harm us? Is that, I mean, just to take it.
That's a perception. That's a group perception.
Yeah.
Perception.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is if I said Donald Trump is human and fallible and on a path and I'm sending him love, like, that's a totally different thing than if a group of people are doing that, than if a group of people are saying Donald Trump's insane and harmful and it's going to damage the world. Like that, there's different, and the intent might be, I'm a loving person and I'm trying to protect people, so I think Donald Trump is evil. The intent doesn't have to be negative, but if a bunch of people are thinking it, so is that sort of, you think that's what it means? Like, and a bunch of people are thinking it versus a bunch of people thinking something else. Like, that has a meaningful, tangible, concrete impact on reality cells. Is that?
I'm not quite sure how that ties into the content here, but it's definitely a truth. Yeah.
Right. Well, I guess my question was, so that, like, my question is clear, is that it says if you consider thought packets as discrete energetic patterns of content, so, you know, or the thought could be, I believe in Santa Claus. Like, it doesn't, I'm not trying to make it political. That was just a thought, something that popped in my mind. But that there's this discrete energetic pattern of content. So there's a whole pattern around people's perception of this particular person.
Right.
And that's the wrong one right now. And it's propagated or, you know, spread through and by reality cells from one individuated unit of consciousness to another. So I'm just trying to make it practical. I'd say veganism is good, and that, you know, that propagates. Like, it doesn't really matter what the thought is, but if there's a thought packet, is that, or am I off base? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's accurate. Yeah, it's accurate. A good example of what you're talking about would be the 100th monkey. You know, the 100th monkey?
I don't know.
Yes, so it's
No.
I remember you talking about it. I can't remember what it was.
So there was a study done years and years ago, and these monkeys on one island, there was these two different monkey groups on two completely different islands, miles and miles away. And then on this one, and they would eat sweet potatoes, right? And so, yeah, you guys know this. So they would eat these sweet potatoes, and they were always dirty sweet potatoes. They would eat them. Sometimes, you know, because the dirt, like, wasn't that healthy for them. But these monkeys on this one island, they started realizing if they washed the sweet potato in water and then they ate it, it was a lot cleaner and it tasted a lot better. So they were doing that on this one island. And then once it was the 100th monkey started doing it, all of a sudden these other monkeys on this completely different island started doing the same thing because consciousness is connected, right?
Yeah.
So
The idea that once it's the idea that once its time has come, it will be expressed, and they've had more than once people in different parts of the country sort of finding the same, you know, having an experiment or finding the same thing or experiencing the same, like scientists having the same discovery in very different parts of the world. It's like its time has come. It's time for whatever that discovery is to be made.
Yeah, once you reach that tipping point, like critical mass, right? Once a certain number of people. Right?
So if there is more information in the universal consciousness, then different people all over the world are downloading maybe pieces of information.
Because we're all connected,
So to your point about Donald Trump, and everyone's talking about how bad he is, but it's all based on their perspective. Why don't we look at it from his perspective and see, why does he want to build the wall? And why does he want to do certain things? And look at it authentic or without judgment and say, well, what's his view on it? Why does he want to do it? Is it to protect America, the people in America, or I don't know.
But I think, and there could be a bigger thing to it as well. What is he a catalyst for? Could he be a catalyst for people to either lower their entropy and get on board and say, no, we don't feel that that's the right way to do it? Or is it he's a catalyst to help, to say he can be a catalyst to help lower or raise entropy depending on which way you go with what he's presenting.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people are here to be a catalyst in that way.
Mm-hmm.
No, we don't agree with what you say. We're going to go a different way. Or, oh my God, we really do feel this fear and we're going to jump on board with that and build the wall. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And the big perspective of time, even the people whose values he does not reflect, they might end up saying, oh, in hindsight, that was the best thing that could have ever happened, or that was necessary for our growth or whatever.
What does he cause to come about?
Yeah.
And which way do you go with that? Do you end up having growth in the system, or, is it positive growth or potentially negative growth?
Yeah.
Yeah. It almost seems like every time Trump says something, everyone's always negative about it. Like they're eagerly wanting to respond in a negative way.
Sure.
Instead of us trying to understand what does he want to materialize from his thoughts.
Yeah.
So it's like listen to understand versus listening to respond.
Right. And on that note, just to bring it back to the book, guys, we got 15 minutes, but page 92, the very last paragraph there, he says, disagreement does not have to breed hostility. Tolerance of and respect for disagreements, other people's opinions or ideas, that can lead to a creative synthesis of concepts whereupon you are inspired to create your own correct course or reality model. So yeah, by looking at the way somebody's doing something and understanding their motives and their intents, that does open us up to this creativity, so we can look at different possibilities and work together rather than against each other.
Yeah. And again, it was maybe a really bad example, man. I should have thought of something like, if everybody thought, oh, young people are spoiled and whatever, then that might have an actual physical manifestation versus everybody thought, oh, young people are energetic and positive and smart. That, you know what I mean? It was more the collective impact of a certain type of thinking. It's really what I was trying to understand in terms of the energetic content of thought packets is more like it. Maybe that would have been an easier or better example, because the whole political thing gets there's so many layers to it.
But that's the way you're saying. I think what Tom is conveying is look at things unconditionally, and then creating your own judgment, or creating your own, I wouldn't say judgments, but creating your own thoughts from the unconditional views of it, and then creating more options from there.
Right. He stirred up a lot of fear in the culture and people, and each of us has the ability to be part of that fear or not. And yeah, time will tell whether he's been a catalyst, that was helpful in some way.
I think it's how the nation looks at it and how plans to move forward from it on the whole.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not good, it's a lesson, so it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a learning. We're in a learning lab, right?
For sure.
Okay, so anything else? I know we got 10 minutes. Anything else on this chapter that stood out for you guys?
Is this chapter the first time he brings up the big cheese?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Because that's quite a big concept that he just kind of, casually tosses in there, and you're like, whoa, what? So anyway, we don't have to, I'm sure he's going to talk about it later, but I just wanted to ask if it was the first time because it felt like he casually introduced it.
Can somebody explain that concept of a big cheese?
Go ahead, Sylvia.
Okay, I'd forgotten about the big cheese. I had heard him talk about it on a podcast before. I'd forgotten that it existed. But, you know, the way he describes it, it's the chief executive officer of NPMR. And it's a male entity that is in charge, but is also fallible. Let's see, what does he say? He's the supreme being, numero uno, top dog, blah, blah, blah. Nevertheless, he may make errors of judgment, miss something important, be tricked, be led astray, and his energy body can be damaged, compromised, or hurt by others. Perfection is not a requirement. He is of AUM, an individuated consciousness, as are we. Consequently, has many of the same fundamental attributes that we have. However, he's so far beyond us, beyond our capacity, power, responsibility, and function, that the specifics of his being are far beyond our comprehension. And I remember him like a few talking on a podcast how the big cheese had just been replaced by another big cheese, and there'd been politics. And so anyway, that's all of a sudden he tells us not to anthropomorphize or whatever, everything. And then all of a sudden I was like, whoa, that like sounds like us. Like, what's happening here? This sounds crazy. So anyway, yeah.
I mean, I think the big takeaway is it's a higher evolved, you know, free will awareness unit or UOC or whatever, but again, it's not perfect. And I do remember him talking about the big cheese being replaced and how all the politics around it or whatever, and it was just like, oh my God, don't we ever get to a point where that doesn't happen?
So
it could be too that he's using this big cheese. He's telling us about it because usually he doesn't tell us, and I'm surprised, that he wrote it in the book. But he could just be explaining this so that we can understand that there is order. You have to bring order to chaos in order to have a low entropy state. So having people in place to take care of certain functions that we need, that creates order. We don't anthropomorphize so we don't turn or larger consciousness into a guy, right? Because that's beyond comprehension. We don't even go there with it. We don't give that human tendencies. But in terms of non-physical beings, they are a lot like us, just not more evolved, like Suzanne was saying.
Yeah, wild stuff.
But for the very last paragraph in this chapter, it's wherever you are is exactly the right place for you to begin the rest of your life. There's no need to get ready or wait for a better time. So,
Mush on, you husky.
Yeah. I'm big boned.
Yeah. We're all where we need to be. Everybody's where they need to be.
Yep.
Well, we're at least where we need to start from.
Right. Yeah. I think what Daniel was saying earlier is like when we choose to understand each other rather than just judging people, I think that's what helps to lower entropy. Because the high entropy is this chaotic state where we don't get people, we think they're wrong, we point the finger, we blame. And when you're in that place, it's a lot of friction and tension and stress. But when we really put ourselves in other people's shoes and we can see where they're coming from and empathize with them and view the world through their lens, then it offers us a lot more compassion and patience. And that's the big picture, right? Seeing the world through many different perspectives, through each other's shoes.
Yeah, but here's my question, and I don't know. I genuinely I struggle with this. I would love to ask a question as well, but the seeking to understand, does that also work? And I'm not talking about Donald Trump right now, but does that also? What about when there's evil? Like let's say, I don't know, Hitler. Like when there's evil, or not even like, I don't know, I don't care what it is, whatever it is, someone that's torturing people because of their religious faith or whatever. We don't have to make it personal, but something that feels truly evil, is seeking to understand, is that, even in those circumstances, is that the right approach? Or is battle and stress appropriate in that circumstance? I genuinely have no idea. Do you know what Tom would say?
Kill it. Identify it, and if that's truly the nature, if it's evil and harming others, then maybe
I have a little story of Tommy that he shared. I think it was in Tennessee. I was talking to him, and he said, there was a group of us, and he said, it was Pamela actually. She mentioned that Tom had seen one of the 9/11, the gentleman who was who basically was in charge of 9/11. You guys hear this? Did you guys hear Tom talk about this?
I don't remember this.
And so Pamela was like, yeah, Tom, we saw that guy. And I was like, what? The guy who
physically saw him?
Physically saw the man who took control of the plane and smashed it into the towers. And so we're like, what did you do? He's like, yeah, he was, the strangest thing, because we were in the mall, Pamela and I were in the mall, and she was shopping, and, I'm waiting for her. And I see this man walking in the mall, and what I see is this like dark energy all around him. He's got this like really cold demeanor, and he said, I saw that. And then 2 days later, they saw his picture on the news, and he was the one who crashed into the frigging cars. I'm like, oh my God, don't you wish you would have intervened and you would have done something? Why didn't you do anything? But that's not up to him, right? I mean, he would have had intuition guide him to do that. But even though he saw this evil entity, he didn't interfere. He just observed it. Okay, that's happening. But there was no nudge to intervene, so he didn't act.
Yeah.
What else can you do in this day and age? Not like you can pull out a gun and kill the man, and you're going to jail for life, and that doesn't help anybody either.
And I mean, just because there's evil in the world, like, we don't know the big picture, right? We don't know what the consequences are. I mean, obviously it seems that that's a really terrible thing that happened in 9/11, and it is. So many families died. Another interesting thing was that Edgar Casey predicted that too, and great birds will fall from the sky. Right.
Barely hear you, Vanessa.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you either, that last bit.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, because Sylvia, you're asking, what if there's evil that exists? What do you do? Do you just come from love, and do you have understanding? I feel like the answer is yes. What does the world need? More people to fight against it? I think the world needs more people to understand.
I mean, I think that there are times when you are supposed to take actions. That doesn't mean it may not mean going off and killing them, but there are. I don't think we're also supposed to just sit by and see people suffering.
There was a great post from a friend of mine who is from New Zealand, who's living here, and she was talking about the massacre with that gunman. And she talked about how the Prime Minister and how everyone in New Zealand is talking about, they weren't focusing on the gunman, for example. They were focusing on the people and how they were making a change to the whole thing. It was the focusing on the people versus the gunman.
Yeah, it was so beautiful the way they responded. I agree. But I mean, I guess it comes down to, of course, every situation is different. But I'm really asking, like if I'm standing there and some crazy guy's got a gun that's going to try and kill somebody, and I had a gun, I would kill that person, to prevent him from killing someone else. And I think that would be the appropriate action. And so I guess, and in that moment, I don't know that my job is to try and understand why this maniac, is holding a gun to the head of a child or whatever. At that moment, love and understanding isn't the right approach.
Yeah, because love is also very powerful, right?
Yeah,
love is not a passive thing. Love is not you just sit back and let people walk all over you. Love is come from a powerful place of confidence. You do the right thing, and sometimes the right thing means breaking somebody down. Fighting back. Sometimes love does mean to fight back and stand up for what you know is right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love is not to turn the other cheek.
Well, thank goodness I don't have to face these questions in my own life very often. It's just, you know, as I'm trying to mentally organize like how I think about these things. It's like if I seek to understand someone and I really try and understand and I think actually that person's coming from a place of evil. Like now what? Like I can seek to understand someone and say, oh, they have a different opinion than me because they have a different set of experiences, because they view it this way, and they're not evil. They're actually a kind person that has a difference of opinion. I think that kind of trying to understand is really positive. But when you encounter true evil, which I think probably doesn't happen a lot, but you know, then like it just makes me question the where the boundaries are, and I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's hard to know sometimes because we don't have as many potential choices as somebody like Tom does. We have much more limited choices based on our particular development.
We're limited by what we know.
Exactly. And we're limited by, oh, well, then maybe we should just take out that person and kill them, versus somebody like Tom might have, you know, far more options to deal with a situation like that.
Yeah.
Point.
Yeah. Tom uses the analogy sometimes of when you look at the old like kung fu movies, you know, when you see somebody who's like really powerful, they're just like, they're on point and they're not stressed out and they're like taking everybody down like so gracefully, because they are coming from this big picture understanding. They're not just, they're not frantic about it. They're in the flow.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a really good visual. Yeah.
So that we're at time, guys. So why don't we do a closing circle? Just share any final insights or thoughts that you want to share. Suzanne, do you want to start?
So now I remember the chapter.
Yeah.
And no, I think it's always good to have other people to talk about things with, because it helps to clarify my understanding. And anyway, and thank you, Daniel, for the link to the Muse. I'm gonna look into that, and maybe that'll help me to focus in my meditations or binaural.
It's helped me a lot.
Okay.
Oh, I think I know. I think I went to business school with the guy that started this, or is at least a part of it. He's like a super chill dude who,
I think there's 2 people that started it.
Maybe he's one of them. Or maybe he's below them and is part of the team. Who knows? But he's got something to do with it. That's cool.
Yeah.
And I'll be gone for the next 2 weeks, so I'll try to watch the videos, and I will miss you guys.
And read the chapters.
Get along.
You can get Tom's perspective of the chapter.
I think he has the chapters memorized. So Tom, tell me about chapter 42 and what we're really trying to convey.
You'll have a lot to report back and share with us.
Oh, the stress.
Anybody else?
Great hanging with you guys, as always. Thanks for the deep philosophical discussion and the percolation for the brain, right? So, and Susan, have a good trip.
Thank you.
I envy you. I wish I was there too.
Me too.
We'll be there with you in spirit, in consciousness.
Yeah.
Sure.
Good. Bojana?
Well, thank you very much for this refresher and your understanding of it. It helps me to understand the big picture too. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Daniel?
Yeah, thank you for helping me get a better understanding of this chapter. Yeah, it's good. I'm looking forward to the next chapter as well.
Sylvia?
Yeah, thanks. It was so good to be back. I love meeting Bobby. I'm so glad we have another person. This is great. And I thank you all for your questions and insight. I always learn so much. I send me whatever link I need to either join the meeting if that's appropriate today, or whatever is the appropriate next step for me.
Definitely, we'll do that for sure.
Okay.
My book.
Thank you guys for the insight. Always.
I'm just
Thank
going
you for your
to.
patience as I'm starting to learn and.
It just ended right now, so I'm going to disconnect from that.
Yeah.
Thank you, buddy. Good to have you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
It's awesome, and we'll see you guys next week. Chapter
Okay.
7.
Peace.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.